Okay, so this is the last big picture video. I'm going to get into three things here after I get my timer going. And I think this is going to not be overly long, because I don't think it needs to be. The truth is that advice that's general enough to apply to all circumstances is too vague to be useful, and I can't give you specific advice because you're probably going to have to write 300 different kinds of documents in the rest of your career. And each one's going to be slightly different because they're different kinds of documents. I guess the trick is to get into a job where you get paid to write the same thing over and over again. Then you can get good at it. But you may not have that luxury. All right, timer. All right, and we're on the clock. In any event, first thing I need to talk about is organizing your thoughts. Keep in mind that all writing, important writing, is going to be about conflict. If we all agree on things, then there's nothing to write about. Just like there's nothing to go to court about if you're a lawyer. You go in there and say you agree with your opponent, the judge is going to knock both your heads together and say, why are you wasting my time? If you're writing about something other than a fan letter to your favorite band, there's no need for agreement. You should be writing about something that matters and that there's two or more points of view about. So keep in mind that it's about conflict, because that should always inform what you're doing. Work from an outline, that's obvious. It's best if you frame the deeper issues at the outset. And when you're doing so, try to keep those issue statements to 75 words or less. That's something you can develop a skill for, even if you're working on different kinds of projects, because that's always something you're going to need to do, is to know what the issues are, be able to state them succinctly and clearly. You want to frame those issues and the argument, not the issues, but the arguments that you're making about the issues, what the conclusion you want them to reach, right? Because an issue is not an argument. You frame the issue, then you make an argument about it. But frame the argument in such a way that there's only one answer. Just makes your life easier, and the reader's life easier too. As you write, you want to weave facts into what you're writing. That makes them concrete, and you should always start with your strongest arguments. Remember, I keep saying there's so many things out there competing for your reader's attention. You may not get them all the way through the piece you're writing, so at least make your strongest arguments first. As always, show, don't tell. I've been through that, talking about the classic style. You want to use language that stimulates the visual cortex. And when you're writing your conclusion, as you should write a conclusion, highlight your reasons. Now, the next thing that's on the list is getting into the idea of follow simple rules to transition between paragraphs. Here's the simple rule. Make sure you put transitions between your paragraphs. This is just a matter of attention to detail and concentration, and then maybe proofreading if you miss a beat. Writing the transition, writing the paragraph so they transition from one to the next is usually not a difficulty. The problem is that people forget to do it, not that they don't know how. So when you're writing, keep in mind you need to put transitions in, and when you are editing stuff, keep in mind that the transitions aren't just there because you imagine they are. Make sure they really are there. Again, a lot of this comes down to really knowing your topic, really knowing what you're writing about. That's the important part. If you really know your topic, if you're a subject matter expert on your topic, there's going to be a lot to say, and your trouble is going to be getting everything in under the page limit. So it's different in a case where you don't know what you're writing about, you haven't done your research. In that case, what you're writing is going to be terrible anyway, and I can't help you. I can only help you if you've done your reading, if you've done your research, if you've thought about it a lot. And also if you've read a lot of other articles too, because that's articles, journals, books, chapters, anything you can get your hands on that's good and well written is going to help you out. That's the key. Anyway, transitions you'll learn, you'll get better at remembering to do them, and also, again, the more you read, the more different tricks I think you'll see out there. And finally, there are a few simple rules you should be following to organize your ideas within your paragraphs. And I'm going to zip through this little list here. This is a nice little book, actually. It's by Hurd, Stephen B. Hurd, The Scientist's Guide to Writing. Well, we're political scientists, so what he has to say applies to us. But in any event, with regard to writing paragraphs, you have to take advantage of reader expectations. There's a standard organizational scheme. The number of possibilities each of us okay, well, let me read here. There are a number of possibilities, each of which matches a natural way that readers tend to organize their own thinking. So here are some commonly used ways to get through paragraphs. When you're organizing things within paragraphs, think about things in a spatial or temporal sense, right? Works particularly well for descriptive writing. Experimental procedure from beginning to end, that kind of thing. Go from the general to the specific. That's a form of organizing a paragraph that we're used to as readers. You should be getting used to doing it as a writer too. If you don't do it in that order, things start to look confusing to the reader, except if you go in the opposite direction, from the specific to the general. There may be some occasions where going the other way makes more sense. But don't mix it up, going from the general to something more specific to something more general to something, don't jump around. Just follow, have a track and follow it one way or the other. Least to most important, you can organize a sentence that way. I suggest you organize your arguments anyway from the most important to the less important, or at least the most persuasive to the less persuasive. Familiar to the unfamiliar, that can be helpful to the reader. The simple to the complex can certainly be helpful to the reader. The certain to the uncertain. Deal with the things we know for sure, then deal with the vagaries. And that's that. So those are just some general tips to keep in mind. Again, each new writing task is a different task. So there's no way I can give you an exhaustive list of all the things you need to know and understand for the rest of your career. You're going to have to figure a lot of it out for yourself. But again, read and know your topic, and read widely. Good writing, and those things more than anything else, and thinking about it and concentrating will turn you into a proficient and capable writer. And the obligatory picture of Pansy running away, because that's what she does.